You can double or even triple the benefits of fasting, specifically even longer forms of fasting, if you approach it with the right protocol. Trust me when I say this, I've helped over thousands of patients finalize and implement strategic long fasting protocols and have improved fat loss results to a level that is unparalleled. I have clinics across the nation. My name is Dr. Jones, and me, my medical practitioners, help patients achieve lasting weight loss. In this short video, we're going to dive into various questions regarding peptides, supplementations, and overall strategy upon implementing long fasting protocols. You don't need to have any concern and issues with your thoughts about implementing long fasting, because we're going to make it so much easier for you, and we'll see you guys soon.
So let's start with reinforcing the importance of specific weigh-in days. So the reason why we want to do our best to be specific on the day per week that we weigh ourselves is because we are looking to analyze trends. We are looking to properly analyze trends. That's the first thing. And so inconsistencies in your weigh-in days can throw off the accuracy of these trends and therefore interfere with how accurate we can predict what's going on. So the more accurate the weekly weigh-ins are, the better. The biggest issue, if you weigh yourself a day early, it's not a big deal. Where the issue comes in, because as the goal is to be weighing yourself basically right at the beginning of that long fast, the issue arises is 1 day after that, or 2 days after that, or maybe even 3 days after that. It really does throw off the weigh-in, unless it was inevitable, right? Where you just forgot and you're doing it that way because you can't, right? There's no other choice. Weigh yourself and then put in the notes section next to it, day after fast, day into fast, 2 days after the fast. That way, at least we have some notes for that specific weigh-in. So if we're ever on a phone call and we are looking at the trends and we're drawing conclusions, it would be helpful for us to have that data if need be. Other than that, though, knowing how detrimental weighing yourself 24 hours or later into the fast is, if you think you're going to miss your weigh-in because you're traveling, I'd rather you weigh yourself 2 days early. And then just to remind you guys of the science of what's happening, when you do a 24-hour plus fast, you are depleting your glycogen stores. And glycogen, it's about 1 gram of carbohydrate is stored alongside 3 to 4 grams of water. A lot of people don't know that. So that's why you lose a ton of water weight both directions when you do a long fast, or if you do keto for 2 weeks, it would cause the same thing. And so afterwards, when you start eating, even though you're not going back to high carb, you're still going back to some carbs, and you slowly do start to bring on water weight. So very important that you guys think with that and stay consistent with your weekly weigh-ins for the best results. There's always going to be some hiccups, as you can imagine. If you're on a low dose of tirzepatide and then you still use Uni-Mate, it's pretty awesome. And it's going to be a short-term appetite suppressing effect. You could take Uni-Mate up to 2 times a day, morning and then midday, but I would stop about 8 hours to 10 hours before bed. And that's just because of the newer research behind caffeine intake closer to bed. There's not nearly as much caffeine in a packet of Uni-Mate as a cup of coffee, but there's still enough to potentially interfere quality of sleep. Uni-Mate not only suppresses appetite, but it does have, and this is where I want to get into the real in-depth science with Dr. Beekman, but it does have a bit of it has a bit of an uncoupling effect, which essentially end result is you burn more calories because of that, which is nice. And as you guys probably know, it's based off of yerba mate tea, but it's just it's about 100 times more potent in terms of the active ingredient that's found in yerba mate, which is called cholinergic acid. And one good takeaway from that documentary, from what you guys saw, is probably the main takeaway is diversity of fiber intake, diversity of fruits and vegetables. So I don't get 20 vegetables and fruits a week. It's hard. That's not easy. So I'm striving for it. I agree 100% with that concept, by the way. So just to be clear, but I supplement with broad spectrum fiber products when I can, right? At the end of the day, guys, I can't give you medical advice. This is your journey. I'm here to guide you. But the theory behind this is great. And I do see it work, right? At the end of the day, each of you guys have your own physiology, your own amount of sickness that we're dealing with. And so it's either going to work or it's not. And so it's certainly worth a try. It's if you want to do that sort of experiment within the program, absolutely. And all that would look like is you take it once or twice a day alongside your tirzepatide, which would be different than using it situationally. And then the balance, is more of your evening appetite suppression. And so that's how balance works. You could take balance during the day if you want, but definitely more for your evening appetite suppression since you don't want caffeine. And then, of course, Uni-Mate also shines in the wean off phase. A lot of you guys are at that point or have been at that point. A lot of you are already doing that because I haven't separated the post weight loss group yet. Hopefully here, I've been really strategically looking at the options, but yeah, the Uni-Mate and Balance could also be your main ticket, your main tool to wean off. As a recap, guys, I'm not saying you have to use it at all. You guys know my game here is not to shove supplements down your throats. That's the last thing I want to do. I want to shove a membership down your throats, but not a bunch of expensive supplements. So I think that it's totally, again, it's a financial decision. It's just the most potent appetite suppressing supplement that I know of in the market. And my goal is in a year and a half to make Dr. Jones's version of it for half the price. That's maybe sooner, but okay, great. So that covers a good recap on Unicity and their products. I can't give you guys medical advice. So if concerned about one of your medications for long fasting, you will need to speak to your primary care physician. Unfortunately, though, they're probably going to tell you why you're fasting, right? And I know that. And I'm bringing it up because that's the reality of what some of you guys are going to hear. Hopefully, if you can explain your doctor what you're doing and get some sort of support, then they're going to work with you and give you guidance. They're probably going to tell you some sort of, if they are on board, to just take the med. I'm not familiar with any research on any medication which is truly affected to the point where you don't absorb it at all without some food. Now, mind you, remember, we are taking fish oil. And so fish oil's already 20 calories of fat right there too. That's why I like the fish oil during the fast, because vitamin D is a fat soluble vitamin, and that helps with the absorption of vitamin D2 as well. So there's some synergy for the fish oil as well. So generally speaking, I don't see any concerns with training your body to become efficient at both supplementation and medication intake during your fast. A lot of times when you see that on the label, just so you know, and I'm not saying 100% of the time, but the majority of the time, it's more of a concern of you getting nauseous. That's really what it is. We have that concern for some people with a bunch of supplements too. And the same way that you train your body to consume supplements on an empty stomach is the same way you train your body to adapt to the medication on an empty stomach. So again, talk to your primary care, let them know what you're doing. You can even let them know about the tips that I'm giving you. Just don't say that I told you that, because I'm not giving you medical advice, but you can say, hey, some suggestions I learned would be taking the fish oil. What do you think about that? Soaked chia seeds, if they're really concerned and really want you to get some food. Once we start getting into that rarer category of very specific niche medications that are outside of my scope, that's why I'm giving you guys general advice and advising you accordingly. All right. AOD tolerance break. So we've talked about this a lot, so I can just do a quick recap. Peptides in general, there is no research behind how long you can take a peptide before you need to take a break. Remember, peptides as a whole is a lot less human data available and a lot more animal data. So we're guessing here to the best of our ability. So general rule of thumb for most peptides, 4-to-1, 4-to-1 or 2-to-1 ratio, time on, time off. AOD's on the safer side. So honestly, if you did 4 months on, 1 month off, I think that's great. I think that there are safer peptides and there are more aggressive peptides that should be used more sparingly. The safer ones, BPC 157, thymosin alpha 1, AOD, CJC, those ones still need breaks, but they can be ran more aggressively. And then you have peptides like TB500, for example, all the neuropeptides. Those ones you should use closer to that 2-to-1 ratio as far as time on versus time off. Protein suggestions. As always, when it comes to your protein, we are striving to get as much protein from whole food as possible for nutrition-wise, for the thermic effect, basically probably those two reasons only. But the reality is that's difficult. Protein supplementation is your solution. So there's no excuse for anybody not getting quality protein because I'm saying it's okay to get whey protein. Of course, again, I want you to get it from whole food, but I would rather you have all protein from supplements if it had to be that, because the effects of having inadequate protein consumption, and specifically with regard to muscle retention, is just too big of a concern for me. So it's that simple, guys. Just supplement to hit your protein goals. And there's really nothing else to say with that. All right. MOTS versus AOD. All right. This one's not going to matter so much because AOD is going to be gone. Unfortunately, AOD is going to be gone. And that was a good follow-up question. Let me take a step back and wrap this up with the protein. So as a reminder for your protein formula, it's a range, right? There's no hard formula. You guys heard me a lot say target weight. That's how many grams you should be consuming. So if your goal is 140 pounds, 140 grams of protein. But I'm okay with that range between target weight and current weight. I'm okay. I'm okay with that. Above current weight in grams of protein, probably too much. But that minimum would be target weight in grams of protein consumed per day as a good rule of thumb. Okay. MOTS versus AOD. Big difference. When we look at AOD, which, as you've heard me talk about, AOD 9604 is a fragment of the human growth hormone. And specifically, we use it because I call it artificially induced metabolic flexibility, metabolic flexibility in a bottle, right? Mobilization of fat, instant mobilization of fat to aid you in your flow protocol journey as you're becoming more metabolically flexible, right? That's the logic behind it. It's not just AOD that does that though, guys. Just so you know, when AOD is gone, we're still going to have growth hormone secretagogues. Now, obviously with growth hormone secretagogues, which I'm still a big fan of, I still think they're phenomenal and I still think they're safe. We just have more to consider on the table, right? Because now we're talking about an actual increase in your growth hormone. So there's other pieces of that, right? You're going to get the AOD effect, but you're also going to get muscle, like a positive stimulus towards muscle growth or retention, depending on your calories, right? Improved healing, improved sleep. You guys have heard of growth hormone as the fountain of youth, but I've always found more success with AOD because I look at AOD as more of the, out of all those effects of increased growth hormone, AOD will give you more fat mobilization dose per dose when compared heads to growth hormone secretagogues, but growth hormone gives you a plethora of other benefits. That's why I've always said you can transition into growth hormones closer to your goal, or you can start off the protocol with both in the beginning too as well. Just budget's always the big variable when it comes to peptides. AOD now, guys, with CJC and ipamorelin also is in the bucket of AOD where they're going to be gone. The two growth hormone secretagogues that are not leaving, just so you guys can think with it if you're curious and wondering about growth hormone peptides, samorelin and tesamorelin. So we will have access to tesamorelin in about 2 to 3 weeks. We currently have access to samorelin, and we still have access to CJC ipamorelin, just like AOD. We're still in the final weeks. Samorelin is actually an FDA-approved drug, FDA-approved medication specifically for growth hormone deficiency syndromes, right? And so using it off-label as a growth hormone secretagogue. And then tesamorelin, same thing. That's actually FDA-approved. It's called Agrifta for AIDS patients, specifically for a medical condition called lipodystrophy. Tesamorelin has some powerful belly fat burning abilities because that's literally what lipodystrophy is, belly fat. It's more of the visceral, not so much subcutaneous, but it's still known off-label anti-aging space for the most powerful belly fat burning growth hormone secretagogue. But it's up there. It's expensive. So that's why I never really brought it up because I was happy with AOD. But we will have access to tesamorelin, and we already have access to samorelin too as well. Okay. So I say all that so that I can bring it back to MOTS. So what is MOTS? MOTS will give us, and I'll do a full-blown video on MOTS soon. So that's in my list, my long list of videos. MOTS will cover all the same benefits of the metabolic flexibility, but it does so much more unique pieces. And so you guys have probably heard me say this quickly. It repairs broken mitochondrial DNA. DNA is the blueprint of the blueprint of the body, if you will, right? It's the instructions to the body on how to function. This is probably the best way to explain it I can think of. And this is why certain genetic disorders are essentially irreversible, because it's in the blueprint, right? We don't know how to change the blueprint. Then you have epigenetics, which is an awesome study, a branch of medicine where we can actually change our genetics. We can't change the blueprint, but we can change the expression of it, because you have a blueprint, but then what is expressed of your blueprint is actually what matters. Either you don't have the genes for a certain problem, or you have them, but you're not expressing them. So epigenetics is really cool. But your mitochondria, so every cell in your body has DNA, but your mitochondria, which are these little batteries within your cells, and there's a lot of mitochondria per cell. And this is where actual metabolism takes place. This is where the most broken down particles of the food you consume, we call those substrates, enter the cell, enter the mitochondria, and enter the electron transport chain. Probably remember that term from high school biology and high school chemistry and physiology, but that's the most basic process of energy conversion. And so that process, as you can imagine, is driven and controlled ultimately by the mitochondrial DNA. So what we know is as we age, the mitochondria becomes less efficient. This is why you guys have seen products like NMN blowing up, where people are trying to increase NAD levels, because NAD is a very important cofactor or coenzyme in that process of the electron transport chain. So somebody who's older, and older is totally arbitrary, it hits everybody differently. But generally speaking, the older you are, the lower your NAD levels are. And so supplementing with NAD or NMN, for example, which I've added that protocol to my welcome form. Some of you guys have been asking about the anti-aging protocol. NMN is a precursor to NAD, but increasing NAD increases mitochondrial performance. So a lot of people are looking at metabolic health and overall metabolic disease being a disease of the mitochondria. Now, look, we're not at that point where we know this and definitely for sure, but there's nothing, there's no drug, there's nothing that does what MOTS says it does, right? I say that because I'm not speaking from thousands of patients MOTS experience. I'm very open with you guys, and we've definitely used it. I've personally used it. We got patients on it now, and I've heard nothing but great. It's very safe too as well. But essentially, this is upregulating and improving and repairing the mitochondrial DNA. So now, with that in mind, there is a sort of post effect of MOTS, as opposed to talked about AOD, we talked about CJC. Those peptides are only going to affect you while you're taking them, right? You're mobilizing fat while you're taking them. And when you're not, there's no down regulation like testosterone therapy. When you stop testosterone, you're not making your own. We don't have that with the growth hormone peptides, which is awesome. But when you stop taking them, you stop getting the effect. There's no permanent change. With MOTS, and I'm careful with the word permanent. Nothing in this universe is permanent, except death and taxes is what I always say. But we can say, instead of permanent, we can say a longer lasting effect, because you invest in this regimen, this protocol, which is about 6 weeks. And when you're done, you now have improved mitochondria. I can't tell you how long the improved mitochondria are going to last for. I don't think that science knows, but I have to imagine that you improve your mitochondrial DNA, and the duration of effect is going to be similar to how long did it take to ruin the current mitochondrial DNA that you have. Speculation at this point, but that's my observation.
So if I started taking MOTS, or any of us, how would you know if it's working or not? What would you expect to see?
Yeah, that's asking, how do you know AOD is working?
Well, yeah, I'd like to know that too, because I've been taking it. I can't tell.
Yeah, this answer is going to sound fun. Trust in me and trust in the pet. Even me, I can't guarantee. So you get my point.
What might you see if you were taking MOTS? Like you'd be feeling more energetic, or?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It just got to be clear, right? It's, as much as I hate drugs, as we know that, right? Hate them, I'll use them when necessary. You take a pain medication, it works, right? Most medications you notice because they're powerful, and at the cost of your health, they cause an effect and you feel it, what's there. And then you start getting into like supplements. Great example. Is it doing anything? Right? So it is unfortunate that when we get to this space, it's like, how do you really know? Some people with AOD tell me they notice it, but probably only 20%, maybe even 15, 20% of people say, I can tell, like I feel more energetic. I never felt more energetic on it. So MOTS-C is one of those things where I would imagine the same sort of thing. So so you think about what it's doing, right? It is improving the mitochondrial function. So what does that translate to? Improved metabolism, right? So you're burning more calories at rest. You're more insulin sensitive, which now we do know, we know that already. So we know, so this isn't speculative. It's known. And we have handouts, by the way, on MOTS-C, guys. I'll have videos soon, but if you want the handouts, just text us the Flow Hotline. We can send you the handout. But improved insulin sensitivity, which means reduction of insulin resistance, improved metabolic flexibility, reduction of inflammation. And that's all the things that I want out of the Flow protocol. That's all the things that prolonged fasting does. So this is where it gets really tricky, because how do you know it was the MOTS-C? How do you know it was the fasting? Honestly, it's impossible for me to give you any sort of certainty. And anybody that tells you otherwise, like I always try to be as honest and straightforward with you guys as possible. If the idea of not having confirmation that it's doing something paralleled with the price is too tough of a pill to swallow, then don't take it. You know what I mean? I want you guys to know exactly what you're getting into. I give you my word that I believe in what it does. But let me know if you guys take it and notice a surge of energy. Like I'm collecting data here too. This is really cool with the peptide stuff. But yeah, I know that's not the best answer, but that's the most real answer I can give you. If you guys found this video informative and you learned, then you're going to want to check out this following video that I link. It's all about lasting weight loss. We'll see you there.